Is it Stan?
Yes.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey.
I'm doing well.
Oh, it's you, Stan.
Yes, hi.
Hey, how was your holidays?
Oh, I don't do the holidays.
At all? You don't celebrate the birth of Frosty?
Not at all.
That's a shame.
I look at that as celebrating Satan's return.
Oh. Well, maybe as somebody who believes Satan's return?
Yes.
What's Satan going to do when he returns?
Oh, well, he's got a little time left. He's going to try and do what he can to mess things up, but basically he's going to be crushed.
Okay. And how you know he's going to be crushed?
Well, I'm going off the Bible.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what'd you call in and talk about?
Well, I heard you guys talking about hell and all that, and it's kind of sad because the Father in heaven has no plans to put his children in a fiery place and burn them up.
Didn't you just say that you got this whole thing about Satan returning from the Bible?
Yes.
So I take it you just dismissed those other passages in the Bible where he talks about the hell that he has prepared for the Satan and his followers?
Well, hell is a place where people, well, not necessarily people, but certain ones are going to be put and destroyed
Certain
rather
ones.
What
What certain ones?
Huh?
What certain ones?
Well, it looks like it's preserved for, how can I put this without sounding too totally nuts? Satan's seed, perhaps. And in the parable of the tars, it talks about the end of the world and the gathering up of the wheat. And
So I'm not going to hell?
no,
But I've committed apostasy. That's the one unforgivable crime. I can't go to heaven, so do I just cease to exist then?
you got a good chance like everybody else, and it looks like
I got a good chance. What passage in the Bible are you basing that on?
well, I don't take just any one passage and try and make a big
You
thing
kind
out
of
of it. I
weave a
take
story
everything
from
and
bits and pieces of different passages?
yeah, that it looks to me like everyone that doesn't have the Holy Spirit, ones in the first century, they got the Holy Spirit, they went to heaven. Another group later on down the road, they're going to go to heaven, great multitude, and then everyone else is going to be raised to a new physical life and be given not a first chance, but not a second chance, but a first chance to have a chance to live the right way when Jesus is here on this planet. So everybody gets a good chance.
I'm just, okay. I don't remember that verse, but I understand that you have kind of a different perspective on it. You're not following any particular religion, and
Right.
you kind of do your own thing, but yeah.
Uh-huh. And that's the way it looks to me. There are parts of the Bible which talk about, a place where certain beings are going to be put. It gets back to that whole thing David Icke was talking about, kind of interesting. He labels them a reptilian race, and in a way one might put some small amount into that of the idea that there is this perhaps other seed on this planet.
Sure. So you're, and I'm not, I am, but I'm not being overly critical. You're saying that David Icke's conspiracy theories are in some sense correct, but instead of calling them reptiles, you'd call them demons or Satan's seed type things?
Not demons, but another race. It's getting to the parable of the tares, which Jesus spoke about, the two groups that grew together on the earth and in the end time would be harvest.
Right.
They were left together until the end time. Certain ones were to be burnt.
So you do agree with this kind of general view of some kind of global elite conspiracy that's being run by some non-human entity?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's why there's been things on the planet that God did, like with Noah, when.
Hey, and I was wanting to ask you too, since you have kind of your own take on these things, do you think that was a local flood or a global flood?
Well, it looks to me like evidence of geographic evidence that it was a local thing. Yeah, generally speaking, in a local area. So it looks like some reason not all of the seed was destroyed at that time, but it was.
Oddly, though, in the Bible it says that God's purpose and intent was to destroy everything that walks the earth.
Well, those translations are a little hard. Hebrew is kind of hard to
It's not that hard.
be sure with any accuracy, but it does look that way in most
I think
translations.
you could probably ask a Jew.
Yeah, but it seems like that whole thing pictured a time on Earth when certainly needed to put a little damper on things, as it were.
So you would look at it, I guess, as written by men and not completely accurate and perhaps metaphoric, or maybe got some elements of it wrong, or phrasing is changed and now we don't have as good understanding of what the true meaning was as we did in the past?
Well, we certainly can't for sure know everything like they would have then, and there are some problems with translations we have and other concerns. So, but generally speaking, the story seems to be that was for a reason. The reason being that this other seed was being put on Earth, and so that is what God had to intervene there to keep that from happening in such a big way.
Why did that other seed start propagating in the first place?
Well, I don't know exactly. Seems to be a battle in the world, in the spiritual world, for control over this planet. For some reason, God's allowed this planet to go on for the last 6,000 years or so, and it looks like it's
What about the 4.5 billion years before the last 6,000?
Well, I think the world was prepared for mankind, and then it was in some sort of chaos.
So God's got this really slow build-up with a huge
for humans
finish.
to be able to inhabit the world about 6,000 years ago, since the written history of man.
Okay. I don't know. Did you have any questions for Stan?
No, I don't.
I don't have any other callers, Stan. We can talk about Bible stuff all day if you want.
Well, you're certainly welcome to hit me with any questions you have. I know you were.
Well, the thing is
about
that
hell is kind of sad because people back then used to torture people to get them to leave their way, and so that's kind of a man-made thing put in there. A lot of the parts that talk about torture are just.
Well, that's the thing that kind of baffles me is that, you feel free to go through the Bible and say, oh, these bits are man-made and this bit's not accurate, but there really is a Satan, there really is this I don't know, broad conspiracy to control souls or whatever on the planet, and always coming back, and there is this end-time stuff. But don't worry, even though you're an apostate who's openly made fun of God and considers the paradigm immoral, you've got just as good a shot as getting heaven. What kind of that seems even less fair to me than anything.
Oh, sorry, didn't catch the last part.
It seems that system seems even less fair than the one I'm objecting to. I mean, at least in the Orthodox version, you have to do something. What's the point in buying into the story that you've accepted or generated, actually, and living a particular life if me sitting here as somebody who rejects all of that has just as good a shot at getting to heaven as anybody else? And why would I want to go?
Well, I know heaven is pictured as very often a place that is.
There's no description, so I mean, we have to just invent it.
It has physical area, time. It has looks like a city and trees and.
Sure, we know there's mansions, pearly gates, streets of gold, but really there's no description of
it. Yeah, there's a very good description. There seems to be time, and there seems to be at least one river, and so. There also is the tree of life there.
Well, now, if you're going to go into the descriptions that are there, then also there's the cliff edge where the people up in heaven can peer over into hell to watch people being tormented.
Well, no, that's in one part with Lazarus. That was definitely a parable, and so parables are just stories, but they picture a certain thing.
You're talking about Luke chapter 16.
You can't use that one parable to say that there's a hell, although that people do. But that picture of Lazarus, if you look, it was said for the Pharisees, and so it seemed to be a warning for those particular men of the that they could end
Actually,
up in
that's not what I was referring to, but that's okay. I mean, you're talking about in Luke 16 where he's talking about Lazarus and Dives.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dives isn't even really a name. It just means rich man.
Right. And so that was a parable, but
sure,
people use that to describe
But isn't
hell.
the purpose of a parable to teach us a little bit more about the real paradigm that exists?
To a certain degree, but you can't use that to. You have to look at the preponderance of the rest of the places in the Bible where it talks about hell being the grave, destruction, and
I have
over.
actually, and did this big long lecture a few months ago. You can actually go online to the website and download the lecture that I did on the history of hell, not only from a biblical perspective, but within other religions and within books that didn't make it into the modern Bible, like the Apocalypse of Peter, which is my personal favorite, which was considered inspired scripture by everybody early on. It's in the Moratorium Fragment, and it's a really detailed description of heaven and hell. And the only reason that it's not in the Bible today is because people didn't like to read from it from the pulpit. They didn't like to read about people who were, being burned in a lake of fire while their aborted babies poked them with sticks and flew around their head.
Yeah.
They didn't like to hear about homosexuals jumping off of a cliff onto all of the other homosexuals who then had to climb back up the hill and jump onto them again and do this over and over for eternity. But it was still considered inspired scripture by all the early church fathers and was included in the first New Testament canons.
Well, when you say early church fathers, are you talking about the Catholics? Or?
The early church fathers like Eusebius and Irenaeus, and all of those who built the Bible that you're referring to and picking and choosing from?
I still don't put a whole lot of credence into
obviously,
a lot of their
since you pick and choose which parts you like and don't.
Huh?
I mean, that I understand, but I'm saying that you don't seem to have any criteria with which to support the picking and choosing that you're doing.
Well, the criteria I have is the Bible itself. Let's stick to what we have in not some of the Gnostic stuff that comes out later.
I understand. I will recant any comment that came from text. By the way, Apocalypse of Peter isn't Gnostic. But my thing is that you don't seem to have a criteria to be able to determine which parts you're going to accept out of the Bible and which parts you're going to reject. And when I just asked you about that, you say that you're using the Bible itself.
Well, I certainly am. And the parts, it's not like I just pick and choose from parts.
It is like that, actually.
Well, I disagree. I'm going from the basically the authorized version of the Bible, let's say. And some things, though, that came later, some of the writings that came later are a little iffy, and so I can't make a whole opinion and disregard the rest of the preponderance of evidence because of that. So, but from the preponderance of evidence in the New Testament and the rest of the Old Testament, I can safely come to the conclusion that God has no plans to burn his children for eons. And
well, now that depends on how you define his children, because within a biblical context, his children only qualifies as those people who are saved, not those who are going to be burned.
Well, the ones that do end up in a place where it's talked about as being a fire, lake of fire, are going to be destroyed right away. So it looks like there's going to be certain beings that are destroyed right away. A lot of this comes from the fact that people and have borrowed ideas from the Greeks that we have some sort of immortal soul. So then
So we don't have an immortal soul. Is that we don't have an immortal soul?
No, and the Bible is not saying that. People have put that into the Bible. A soul is just a living being. So
okay. So are there people in heaven now?
Yeah.
And yet their bodies and everything are decomposing underground. So what's in heaven?
Well, they're spiritual beings.
Oh,
They're made in spiritual beings, but
isn't
not,
that the soul thing that you just said we don't have?
No, a soul, as in the Bible, is a living being. If you start out in the beginning to the end, and you look at every place where it says soul, it's always referring to a living being. Fishes were souls, some animals were souls. So a soul is just a living being which can die. And
okay,
so,
but that's not what we meant when we said soul earlier. So there is an eternal spiritual being.
there are spirit beings and there are living, breathing, fleshly beings. So.
Okay, and yet.
Is it kind of like a symbiotic relationship type thing where they inhabit the same space on Earth, and then when
I'm a
the
physical
flesh being dies
the
and the spiritual being continues?
The saints of the first century were taken to heaven.
So, I mean, is there a spiritual being in me right now?
No, that's like you're saying is trying to get back to the whole idea of a mortal soul. There's no spiritual being.
So if I'm
right
entirely a physical being.
I'm sorry?
I'm a physical being.
Yes.
And there's no spiritual being here.
Right.
Okay. Then if only spiritual beings go to heaven, then I can't go to heaven.
Not right now.
Ever.
No. You could be changed
No.
to a spiritual being.
No. Stop.
Yeah.
I'm a physical being.
Right.
There is no spiritual being here. And
no,
it's
there is
only
no
a
spiritual being
spiritual.
here. But you could be changed into a spiritual being, like Paul talked about changing a twinkling of an eye.
Changed into a spiritual being.
Yes.
When does that happen?
Well, for those men in the first century, it happened when Jesus returned for them, probably around the year 70, when the temple was destroyed. And so those men were changed, just like Paul said, from physical beings to spiritual beings.
But how is that me? That's what I'm asking.
Well,
hang on. Let me finish.
They had the Holy
Stan,
Spirit.
hang on. We're going to give you all kinds of time.
Yeah.
I just want to. How is that me? Because to me, as a physical being, everything that makes up what I am is physical and is a component, particularly, of my brain. So am I like downloaded into a spiritual body? Are my thoughts and consciousness downloaded into a spiritual body? Because if later I'm just turned into a spiritual being, how is that still me? Because there's no bridge between the two of them. They're separate entities. So I'm just curious as to how I become this spiritual being.
Well, I'm not privy to all the details there
Then
on
why
how
would you
that
think that
exactly
it happens?
All I know is that that's what happened to the saints of the first century who had the Holy Spirit.
How do you know that's what happened?
Well, I'm going by the biblical record.
The biblical record that you pick and choose from?
Well, that I study very hard to try and understand.
Okay.
So,
what makes you think you've got it right?
Well, I can't say I got everything right. I
what makes you
learn
think you
and
got
study,
any of
and
it
sometimes
right?
I'm wrong and sometimes I'm right, but I do the best I can there, and I sometimes change my views as I learn new things. So not everything's going to be set in stone. If I learn something different, I would change my views on it. But that's right now where I'm at with it. That certainly the things that happened to those men in the first century. When I read the Bible, I look at things being specifically for those people. So when Jesus said to go and preach to all nations, he meant to those guys, not to us. And when he told them that he'd return for them and people would still be alive when he returned, that he was speaking to, I believe that's what Jesus said, and that he came back and took those men. And so after everyone left...
So you believe he's already come back once in addition in order to fulfill what he said, that some of you standing here will still be alive or will not see death until these things come to pass?
He came back around 70
So what you're saying
AD.
is that around when?
70 AD, when the temple was destroyed.
So in the time period between his death, which, first of all, we don't have any reason to think that any of this happened, but his death in 30-ish, 33 to 70, he fulfilled all those obligations. So the gospel was preached in all nations in that period of time?
The known world, yeah. The known world of those people. Those
Doesn't
men,
God know the whole world?
Well, the world for those men was the.
So God's only concerned about saving the world as those men knew it, and screw the rest of them?
Well, there was a kind of first fruits bunch, a pioneer group. If you have there, not everyone in the whole world, of course, but just that general area of the known world that they were in at the time is how one would understand that. Those men were just, generally speaking, locally through the Mediterranean area and spread out from Jerusalem outward. So it was the known world for them. So that statement, go and preach to all nations, all people, was applicable, and you can understand it to say that just those particular nations that were in that area at the time. So, and then after Jesus came for those people, there was no one left to have the Holy Spirit, and so everyone went to heaven with Jesus, and that's where they are. But there's going to be another group later on in the future that is a bigger group, so many can't be counted, called the Great Multitude, and they're going to have a similar experience where that group is going to be changed into spirit beings sometime in the future.
It's an interesting story. I just don't see how you can justify any of it, or what reason you have for thinking any of this is true in the first place. It
well,
seems
like I say, I studied the Bible. I look in detail at what it says, and I kind of reject.
I understand that, Stan, but I could do the same thing with any book.
Yeah, the problem here kind of comes up as, how do you know that what you're reading and your interpretation of it is the correct one, and it's not Satan, the devil, demons having a field day with you and your interpretations? Matt obviously has a very different interpretation of these kind of things than you do.
Well,
who's to say that he's not got the right one and Satan's been having a field day with you, or the other way around?
You do the best you can there, and it's good if it makes sense. It makes a lot more sense to me that God would give everyone a chance for one, and I'd always.
So you go into it with a preconception about what you think the nature of God is, and you read that into whatever you're reading in order to make it say what you want it to say.
No,
yes.
I look
That's
at
what
it
you
in
said.
a
I
way
just
that
phrased it
is
differently.
Objective and analyze it as best I can so that
Just
I can
fit
make sense
your
of it all.
preconception. My question is, let's ignoring interpretation entirely. You're making assumptions about the truth of what's in the book, that anything in the book actually happened. And I'm curious as to why you would think that anything in that book actually happened.
Well, I think that that gets down to the central question of whether you believe that book is, even with its problems of translations and other things that you have with it, is a historical record of what happened to those men. And so I happen to
believe it is.
That's so.
Okay,
so that
why?
Makes, from my perspective, I look at it, okay, if these things happen, how was it for those men? And, I also look at it as, when I read it, I don't apply the things to myself today that was said to men 2,000 years ago.
So from your perspective, you judge the Bible to be historically accurate. Because this is about the third or fourth time we've had this little piece of discussion.
Yeah.
And every time I ask you what reason you have for thinking it is, you can't provide no evidence. You just say, from your perspective, you believe that it's true.
Well, just like from your perspective, you don't believe it's true.
Yes, but my perspective, no. My perspective is based
perspective.
on the fact that there's insufficient evidence to justify the claim that it's true. You don't get to say that we have equally valid yet opposing viewpoints.
Well,
you're accepting something is true, and the only justification that should be used to accept something as true is evidence to support the claim.
Right.
Not a lack of evidence to prove it wrong, not a personal viewpoint about your preconceptions of what may or may not be true about it.
Well, I have no reason to believe it is not true.
You're just not getting
accurate.
it, Stan. I just, not 10 seconds before, said that the burden of proof has nothing to do with evidence that proves it wrong. And we got actually full lines, and you've been on for a while, so I thank you for calling, but we're going to move on to some others now. You can't, I don't know how that gets missed. If you've got a claim...
I haven't seen anything to prove me wrong, so...
Yeah. I haven't seen anything that proved that there's not leprechauns, stealing socks out of my dryer. Doesn't mean that's what's happening. But anyway.